Imagine a society where questioning has quietly vanished. The people still speak, still argue, still debate, but the substance is gone. What passes for thought is nothing more than reflex, opinion traded for opinion, noise mistaken for knowledge. In this age of endless information, the human mind, once sharp enough to build empires, has been dulled into passive acceptance. This is no accident. Power has always known that the most dangerous weapon is not a sword, but a man who thinks. And so, over time, rulers, institutions, and systems have perfected a quieter strategy. Not to silence the people outright, but to drown them in so much distraction, so much noise, that they forget how to think at all. What emerges is what philosophers now call collective stupidity, a state in which the masses, though loud and restless, no longer possess independence of mind. They accept narratives without question. They adopt shallow opinions as if they were deep convictions. And they surrender their intellectual freedom without realizing that they have given up anything at all. This is the foundation of modern control. A people who cannot think cannot resist. The disappearance of critical thought is not random. It is cultivated. The modern environment does not reward reflection. It rewards speed. Outrage is prized more than understanding. Emotional reaction is valued over reasoned judgment. Conformity is praised, while doubt is treated as rebellion. Algorithms ensure that each person hears only what pleases them. Schools train obedience, not inquiry. The media reduces complex reality to slogans. These are not failures of the system, they are its design. For rulers have long understood, it is easier to govern the obedient than the intelligent. Noam Chomsky once described this as the manufacturing of consent. People are taught not to understand, but to agree. Not to think, but to consume. Once they accept this arrangement, they are manageable, predictable, and, above all, harmless. But the problem runs deeper than propaganda. It begins with overload. The average citizen now receives more information in a day than their ancestors absorbed in a year. Bombarded with endless updates, advertisements, and opinions, the mind retreats. Instead of analysis, it leans on shortcuts, biases, groupthink, imitation. This is why falsehoods spread faster than truth. When one sees a claim praised by thousands of others, the instinct is not to question, but to conform. This is called social proof. It is ancient in origin, once useful for survival, now repurposed as a tool of control. In truth, the masses are not stupid. They are conditioned. Conditioned to accept the signals of the crowd in place of the work of reason. Conditioned to follow influencers and authorities rather than stand on their own judgment. Another weapon against thought lies in the decline of reading. The digital age has rewired the mind for skimming, for fragments, for distraction. Critical thinking, however, demands patience, depth, and silence. Few now possess the discipline to read deeply, to sustain reflection, or to wrestle with complexity. Carl Sagan once warned that a society dependent on science and technology, yet ignorant of its principles, would be vulnerable to ruin. He was right. For when people stop thinking critically, they stop questioning authority. And when they stop questioning, they become clay in the hands of those who rule. This decline is not technological alone. It is also emotional. To think critically is uncomfortable. It demands the courage to admit ignorance, to accept uncertainty, to abandon cherished illusions. Most people prefer the safety of tribe, slogan, and certainty. They repeat what flatters their identity. They silence doubt. Not because they lack intelligence, but because they lack the courage to risk being wrong. The education system has long served this purpose. As John Taylor Gatto observed, modern schooling does not produce thinkers. It produces obedient workers. From childhood, curiosity is punished, conformity rewarded. Children learn early that silence is safer than inquiry, and that survival lies not in thinking, but in memorizing. This conditioning continues into adult life. In workplaces, media, and even friendships, the cost of questioning is social exclusion. Thus, most remain quiet, choosing comfort over clarity. Eric Fromm called this the escape from freedom, the surrender of thought, in exchange for the relief of obedience. In truth, the majority do not want freedom of mind, because freedom comes with responsibility. To think is to be accountable for what one believes. To obey is easier. Social media perfected this manipulation. What began as a tool for connection became a weapon of distraction. The platforms thrive not on truth, but on division. They reward speed, outrage, and vanity. Thoughtfulness has no place in such an environment. Marshall McLuhan foresaw this. The medium reshapes the mind. Today's mediums produce citizens who skim, react, and rage, but rarely think. In this environment, the most powerful truth is often buried beneath the most viral lie. This is the tyranny of the majority, not in politics, but in cognition itself. Truth is no longer measured by evidence, but by applause. The herd decides reality, and the individual who dares to resist is silenced by ridicule or ignored into irrelevance. The consequences are severe. When thought dies, manipulation thrives. Politicians learn to package complex issues into slogans. The media reduces policy into spectacle. Corporations engineer distraction to keep consumers docile. The masses, deprived of their intellectual independence, are ruled not by chains, but by illusions. This is the oldest lesson of power. When a people cannot think, they cannot resist. Even intelligence does not protect against this. Daniel Kahneman showed that human reason is split between fast, emotional impulses and slow, deliberate analysis. In a world that demands speed, most live permanently in fast mode, reacting, not reflecting. Elites know this, and they exploit it. They repeat narratives until they become familiar, and familiarity masquerades as truth. Confirmation bias ensures that once a belief is accepted, it is defended fiercely, regardless of evidence. Groupthink ensures that dissent is silenced for the sake of harmony. And so even the intelligent are led into error, as long as the crowd moves with them. History shows that progress has always been carried by the few who resisted this instinct. Galileo against the church, Darwin against tradition, Martin Luther King against society's comfort. But such resistance is rare, for it demands more than intellect. It demands courage. In every age, rulers fear the thinker more than the rebel. A rebel can be crushed by force. A thinker, however, infects others with doubt. That is why true critical thinking has always been discouraged, and why its disappearance today is celebrated quietly by those who profit from it. The cost of thinking is high. It may lead to rejection, exile, even death. Yet the reward is clarity, dignity, and the rare power of belonging to oneself. Why then do so many today feel anxious, lost, or unfulfilled despite wealth and technology? Because they have surrendered the one thing that gives life direction, the ability to question. They outsource thought to the crowd, to algorithms, to authorities. They mistake noise for knowledge and validation for truth. But those who reclaim their mind gain something priceless. They begin to see manipulation where others see reality. They recognize propaganda dressed as information, obedience disguised as education, and distraction masquerading as connection. This awareness is dangerous. It cannot be sold, cannot be controlled. It makes the individual unpredictable, resistant, and difficult to rule. For this reason, rulers prefer a society of passive believers to one of independent thinkers. The final truth is simple but harsh. Critical thinking does not vanish because people are incapable of it. It vanishes because they fear it. To think is to risk the loss of identity, tribe, and certainty. And most would rather cling to illusions than face reality. But illusions, however comforting, make easy slaves. Reality, however harsh, makes free men. Machiavelli himself would remind us, a ruler prefers a people who obey without thought. But a wise individual, seeking freedom, must resist this fate. He must question, doubt, and challenge not because it is easy, but because it is the only path to true independence. In the end, the war for freedom is not fought on battlefields, but in the silence of the mind. Those who surrender their thoughts surrender themselves. Those who reclaim them, however few, light the fire that has always terrified rulers, the fire of a people who can no longer be deceived.